5 Live.
Now, there are loads of films out about superheroes, aren't there? Spider-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy, Wonder Woman, take your pick. But what does it mean to be a superhero in a world where you can often feel isolated? That's what's looked at in a new short film, which is trying to give authentic portrayal of life on the autism spectrum. The film's called Spectrum, centred around a man called Steve who has autism. Not only that, but it brings together a cast of neurodivergent and untrained actors. Here's a little taster.
What's your individual superpowers?
Do you know weird creatures is called autism?
So we're in the superhero territory. Okay.
Just keep sending these defects.
How is he listening?
I'll just a bit confusing, right?
Some friends are fine, I want to cheer you up.
There we go. It's rather dramatic. So we're going to hear in a moment from the director. But Lisa, you're off.
I'm gonna go.
No, I don't blame you. Thank you very much for being with me. You were with me again. You were with me again at some point. Are you next week, maybe?
I hope so.
You have to be.
I am next week. But anyway, I will. I'll be back. Will you have me back?
Don't plot spoil. People will be not tuning in. Yeah, you can come back whenever you want. Is that all right?
You can crack on. I'm away. See you.
Thank you. Lovely, lovely Lisa McCormick. Right. So you heard a bit of a clip from Spectrum there. Let's hear from the director and the writer of the film, Rick Stanton.
So Spectrum is a 30-minute drama which deals with the subject of autism. It's a very honest take on the subject due to it being authentically cast, with my brother who has autism playing the lead. He's also supported by actors including Bafta Winner Wunmi Mosaku, who you may know from Loki, Deadpool Wolverine, Black Mirror, and a bunch of other TV shows and films. This is very important, I think, due to the fact that currently only 2 out of 29 films that have ever been nominated for an Oscar have actually been authentically cast in terms of disability. So I think it's a really important film at this sort of time and place.
Yes, and so you've talked about your friend who lives in Hollywood who's in the movie, but the cast is largely neurodivergent, which leads to all sorts of questions which we'll get to in a second. And I do want to talk about your brother as well. But what's the plot? Now, we can't plot spoil, but it all revolves around one of the final scenes, doesn't it? So talk us through the plot of Spectrum.
So Spectrum just sort of shows daily life of somebody with autism. I think in film, often people on the spectrum have been depicted in a sort of certain direction, and this is more of a sort of honest take. Films often depict having autism as almost like a super ability almost, and we kind of just wanted to shake that up and show the honest truth of how life is actually like, rather than how it's depicted.
And we'll explore how you do that in a second. But what you saw something happen, didn't you, that got the old spark going about why to make this movie? What did you see and how did it affect you?
So basically, sort of giving away the ending, and it's the reason I started to write the film, was one night I was walking home probably about 12 years ago at like 2 a.m. in Stratford in East London. And then I could hear some shouting and screaming. And then when I went to see what was happening, I found this lady with all blood all over her face, and she had been attacked by somebody. I didn't see who it was. And then as I was trying to calm her down, help her, the police arrived and they sort of assumed that I was involved in the attack, and they put me in handcuffs and put me on the floor. Luckily for me, there was a witness from a tower block who came down, and she basically told the police that she's the one who informed the police of an attack and that I had nothing to do with it and that I was helping her. And from this, basically, I wrote that scene down because I felt it should be depicted. And then I thought, what if this had happened to my brother who has autism? How would he react? Would he react any different? And how would that play out? And so then I started to think, how can we write a film that leads to this moment in his life? And this is how we ended up with Spectrum.
Right. And so I think it's time now to talk about your brother a little bit. Tell us about him. Tell us all the lovely things about him.
So Steve is 35 years old now. He got diagnosed with autism when he was around 14. My mum first see signs when he was around 5. So it took a good sort of 9 years to actually get an official diagnosis. And then he's just lived life sort of slowly making progress, really, which has been interesting for me because I shared a room with Steve until I was 25. I'm 38 now. So I got to sort of live in that shared experience of how life was hit for him and how it was different compared to me. And sort of seeing him progress has just been, it's been a long process, but we're in a good place now, you know, like he does have it, like in the film, it's a big part of it is he struggled to find work. One of the reasons we had that in the film is only 30% of people with autism are actually employed in the UK. And so we wanted to sort of highlight that. And also with Steve, he's kind of, with his progression, one of the reasons he's progressed so much is because he does actually have a job. He's a cleaner at West Ham Football Ground. And since having that job, he's come on leaps and bounds. So that's the importance of work. And I think we tried to show that.
How did he react when you said, I've written a film for you, mate, you're going to be the star?
Well, that was a tricky part for me, really, because by writing the film, I kind of put myself in the corner, because if he didn't want to do the film, then I would have just had to find something else to do, essentially. And when I went to see him and I said, like, I wrote this film and how do you feel about being in it and being the lead? At first, he was a bit unsure, which obviously most people would be. But after I sort of spoke to him about the film and how we're going to make the film, he was up for it and thought, you know what, why not? You know, let's take on a new challenge.
Yeah, and now you're going to be biased, but you know, what are your early reviews of his performance?
Well, it was interesting because when we decided to, okay, let's go ahead and do this, I did a little screen test with him just to see how he reacts on camera, because in my normal day job, I do like branded content and commercial sort of work. And sometimes you might film someone who's never been on camera before, and then it's just terrifying for people, obviously. So we did a little screen test. We did like a little one scene. And then it felt quite obvious to me at that moment that we need to lean into his strengths. So Steve never saw the script for the film at all. And also none of the other people who were in the film who were on the spectrum saw the script either. And this was because I felt it would be sort of overly intimidating for him. And also it meant that we could improvise scenes more freely. So the way we would work is on the day, we'd be like, okay, we've got 3 scenes to do today. This is the premise of scene 1. Let's roll camera. And the main point of this scene is, for example, you need to decide whether you're going to wear a suit for a job interview. Yeah. And then we'll just let the characters just roll from there, really. And then depending what they would naturally say, we'll just lean into that. And then if they went too off course, then we'll bring it back to the plot. But yeah, it was a very interesting way to work.
And so casting Steve was a no-brainer. He's your brother, who's the inspiration for the film. But what about the other neurodivergent characters in there? A lot of them go by their real names, don't they? Bob, Carl, Rachel, Jade, Sue, Young Nova. So how do you get that group of people together?
So they are all Steve's friends in real life. So essentially, some of them I've known for maybe 15, 20 years. And that was involved in the writing process as well, because I always knew hopefully we'll get them on board as well. And so with that, it was like, there's a lot of superhero reference points in the film. One reason, because autism is often referred to as a superhero, so we wanted to lean into that. But another reason was because we knew that Steve's friends are like encyclopedias when it comes to superhero culture. So we knew that would really give something new to that element, which was really interesting, and it's where we got the best lines of dialogue, really. And it was really important to cast that way because people need to be represented, and they did an incredible job.
How does it work when you're trying to get a narrative arc together for the film? Because you can go into a scene and say, look, this is the premise, but you've got to move the film on, haven't you? There's got to be a plot line that keeps running. So how loose were you able to be with the format?
The way we would work, it was more like we'll say the premise and then we'll give suggested lines of dialogue, and then with that we'll just roll camera. We'll roll camera, 2 cameras all the time, so that we'll roll camera constantly, so we'll never cut. We'll just let everybody just freely express themselves, and then because we just knew that as long as the premise is there, it will continue for the whole storyline. So that's just how we worked, basically.
I think at this stage we're going to hear a clip. We'll play a little clip now. So the film opens with a support worker asking the assembled company what are some of the good points that having a job can bring. She asks each of the participants in turn, then comes to Jade, and this is what Jade has to say. Let's have a listen.
So we were talking about like what the good things about having a job can be. Do you have any thoughts on that?
We should be involved in life.
Yeah.
And so what we can give people.
I suppose that, listening to that, Rick, that's the fundamental message of the film, is it? That everyone should be given a chance. Everyone's got something specific to offer.
Yes, and the way that scene run is we run it as like an actual support session. So with Wunmi Mosaku, who plays the support worker in that scene, she just was handed. I gave her a list of questions, and then she just run it as if it was just a real session. So Jade's answer there, she was never briefed to say that. That's just her answer, which is unbelievable. As soon as you land on that line, like that, her saying that, we didn't do any more takes of it. It's just that is the take of the natural session. And that's the sort of authenticity the film holds.
There's another bit of the film where Steve goes into the corner shop to buy some groceries. He's a few pence short when he's buying some milk, and the shopkeeper says, well, look, instead of having a large one, get a small one. And that confuses Steve, and he's distressed. And so I'm wondering, that would be obviously a natural reaction, Rick, but viewers who aren't on the spectrum are going to get a lot out of this, not least how to interact with people who are on the spectrum.
Yes, hopefully people get more. It's not necessarily a film about autism straight away, because the word autism is only mentioned once, and it's very sort of loose. And when people have seen the film, like we've had it at like a festival a couple of weeks ago, people were speaking to me after, and they wasn't seeing it straight up as an autistic movie. They see it as a film with many layers. Like lots of people refer to it as just like a family movie, how families support each other, how it's important to have a strong social network, strong friendships. One thing I would say about it is, I think when I tell people that my brother's on the spectrum, I think they think he's going to be a child. I think they forget that children grow up into adults and become are still autistic. That
illustrates another discussion point, really, doesn't it? That grown adults who know their own mind often are treated like children by people who are interacting with them. Yeah,
100%. Like when I think of my brother, for example, I never think of him of having autism really, because I just naturally sort of interact with him. He's just my brother, you know. But when I sort of take a back seat and then watch Steve interacting with strangers, I can sometimes see them sort of be a bit patronising sometimes.
So is your instinct there to jump in, or just to let that conversation play out?
Typically, I let it play out because I think it's important for Steve to see if somebody's sort of backing off from them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And also, but I'll jump in if it's necessary. But I think it's more, like you said, sometimes people do sort of talk down to people with autism because they sort of feel like they're talking to a child a bit, and I think that's not necessarily the way it should be.
If it's not a part of your everyday life, you do have to learn somewhere, don't you, how to deal with it. So let's hear Steve's voice now, shall we? So this is a scene where Carl is asking Steve what he's going to wear to an interview. Let's have a listen.
So what are you going to wear for the interview?
I was thinking like a shirt and some trousers.
I don't think that's a good idea, Steve. Even though it's not the same thing, but Batman, Batgirl fight crime. They don't fight crime in their street clothes, do they? No, because they don't take them seriously. They wear their bat suits. It may be not the same suit as a tuxedo sort of suit, but it still is a suit, which makes them like the mean business, which is what a suit is for. So just think about it like that.
Yeah.
I mean, would she get a job as a superhero if she was just wearing her normal street clothes? No, because people would think, oh, she's just a librarian.
That's Steve talking to Carl. Was all that ad-lib then? Rick, how did that scene work?
Yeah, so a lot of that was leaning into Carl's strengths because Carl just knows so much about superheroes. It's unbelievable. And with that, he was briefed to sort of tell Steve that he should wear a suit for a job interview because it'd be more professional. And at the time, they're also playing like a superhero video game. So with that, I did say to Carl, like, how natural conversations work when you're with your friends is you'd be talking about one subject and then you sort of sometimes veer off to other things. So I said, while you're telling Steve about the suit, sometimes just veer off and then come back to the suit, and then talk about superheroes for a second and come back to it. But Carl just took that upon himself. And so all of those lines there are Carl referring to Catwoman being a librarian. It's all from Carl. I didn't know that as a reference point. That it's all him.
So you're filming thinking this is gold dust. I just wonder, before we hear a little bit more from the film, how did you get the funding for this? Who did you have to pitch it to?
So this was a completely self-funded project. Essentially, me and Steve's grandmother died, so we had a little bit of money. So it was either go on a holiday or make a movie. So we made a film.
And well, I mean, I don't really want to ask you how much you were left by your grandma, but it sounds like obviously it's not a multi-million-pound budget. Then is it quite a simple affair?
The film cost total around £5,000,
right?
Which I think is pretty good considering it's a half an hour episode, if you like, a film where I heard the other day that the American Office cost around $4 million per half an hour. So I think we're not doing bad.
You're not doing badly at all. And so where does that money go? Did the cast work for free, Rick, or is it all on the screen, that cash?
So there's a big moment at the end when we had like a police car and there's like 5 actors and stuff and an outdoor location at night. That took probably 3/3 of the budget just on that one scene, which is probably about a 3-minute sequence. Then the rest of it is buying everybody a pizza at the end of the day, paying a sound guy for a couple of the occasions, and then essentially everyone else is just free and on favour, essentially.
And they're doing something that they may never get the chance to do again in their lives. So it's quite an exciting invite anyway to get, isn't it? To be in a movie. Where do you hope this will go, Rick? What kind of distribution have you got?
So the natural way, obviously, is typically people would enter their films into festivals, but I've decided not to do that. We've put it straight onto YouTube just because we want to just get an audience, We want to get a response, and we want the autistic community to connect with it, and also people that may know somebody with autism or maybe have never met anybody with autism to see what life is like, So, yeah, so it's out there now on YouTube to watch because films should be seen.
We heard that clip earlier about a support worker talking to people about how they would cope in a certain situation. We'll go back to that scene now because to resolve that scene, everyone starts talking about superhero powers, which takes us back to the absolute premise of the movie in the first place. So let's have a listen to that clip.
So yeah, I thought today maybe we could go through some interview questions that you might get asked at a job interview.
Did you know Reed Richards has got autism?
Oh, really? Wow, I did not know that. Is he the one who does the stretchy thing?
Yeah, Rubber Boy.
Rubber Boy, who's that?
Oh, he's what they call the most intelligent superhero in Marvel from the franchise Fantastic Four.
Okay, I've heard of Fantastic Four. Okay, so we're in the superhero territory. Okay, so question for you. If you could have any superpower in the world, what would it be?
Superwoman.
It's interesting listening to that, Rick, because, again, trying to learn lessons of if you were in that situation, it's going with the flow of the conversation, isn't it? Rather than try to force it down an avenue that you'd be more comfortable with. You've just got to go with the way those people you're talking to want to take it.
Yeah, 100%. Like we shot that for around 2 hours, that scene, and we just, like I said before, we literally just asked the questions and let them answer with honest responses. And I could probably make probably a 20-minute documentary just from that session, just because it's just getting people on the spectrum's honest opinion about multiple different subjects. Within the film, we had to cut it down to just be around, 2-3 minute scene, but there was multiple questions that we could have took it in different directions, which is would be interesting to put out as well, I think.
So, I mean, what's your background here, Rick? How are you involved in the business?
So I left school at 16 with just GCSEs. I didn't go to college, didn't go to uni or nothing. And then, but around that time, I taught myself to edit, just been making like silly skate videos and stuff. And then I got involved in the sort of Camden music scene in the sort of like around 2006, 2007. And that sort of introduced me to a lot of bands. And then from that, I started to film some tours and stuff, and then got involved in Universal Music and Metropolis Music, who used to run V Festival, and I used to manage Amy Winehouse. And then from that, like when Amy passed away, I started to film for the Amy Winehouse Foundation. And it just sort of rolled on from there, really. We've started in music, then we went into like branded content, sort of commercial work. And that's just what I do now, like as just my day-to-day life.
Right. And so what are you aiming to? We talked about a distribution deal, but what are you actually aiming to do with this film? Do awards matter, that kind of thing? Do you enter it into competitions, or is it all just about getting eyes on it?
For me, it's just about getting eyes on it, because I just want people to see it, you know, like it's tough to get someone to sit down and watch something for 30 minutes, which I appreciate, but I just want people to see it and people to take something from it. And hopefully, like every filmmaker, you want it to lead to something else. I'm currently looking to branch into TV and film, looking for an agent. So, yeah, this is my next step on the ladder, essentially.
Well, I always say about Five Live, you never know who's listening, Rick. And so if people can watch this movie, what about? Did you have a local premiere? What did all the actors make of it?
Yeah, so we had. So the film is shot in East London. And growing up, I used to always go to the Stratford Picture House. So they did a nice deal with us. And then we had like a nice screening with friends and family to come down. We had like 60 people there. And it was just a really great occasion. And yeah, it had a really great response. And we've been in a couple of festivals now, as we have been, but and the response has been really great. But the main response has been from the autistic community on the YouTube comments, which is the nicest thing. Every day you get a couple, and it's just really great how people are responding.
And what are they saying? What are they saying?
One of the nicest things is how they respond so well to a scene which is probably not going to be in most movies, where, like you said earlier, Steve literally just goes into a corner shop and buys a pint of milk, where most films would think that is like a boring activity to do in a film, where that is so important to the autistic community, because that's the scene that people are responding to the most, because it's something so simple but a daily occurrence for them.
And you know, if you're talking in movie terms as well, I mean, I know it's Steve's life we're talking about here, but just buying up that milk, there's inbuilt jeopardy right there, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly, and that just comes from the truth, really, because growing up with Steve, it's just sort of a daily occurrence of, say if he's got some money to go and buy something, is he going to come back shortchanged? Or say if he's got to travel somewhere on the bus, is he going to make it there? All simple things like that, which we all take for granted. But when you're on the spectrum, you know what I mean? These seemingly simple tasks can be a challenge.
Just a final word. We've touched on already. There was a trained actor in the movie, the Bafta winning Wunmi Mosaku, Deadpool, Wolverine, Black Mirror. So what kind of level what's the word? Direction did she need during the movie? What discussions did you have with her prior to filming?
So Wunmi I've actually known for, I don't know, about 15 years. We've just been friends for this time. And then basically I got lucky because she actually lives in LA, but she was just in England for like 2 weeks. So as I was prepping for that scene, I found out that she was in town. So I just asked her to come down and do the scene, and she was more than happy to. And then with her brief, it was like, Wunmi, you are a support worker. You're ready to do your session, and here's your questions that you're going to ask today. So just run the session, essentially. You're a support worker, and just run it and let it flow freely, and just respond from what comes at you.
Yeah. Well, look, good luck with the movie. How long's it been out, Rick? Where can people find it? Let's give it a big plug.
So the easiest way to find it is either go to rickstanton.co.uk/Spectrum, or if you go on YouTube and type Spectrum Bark Films, you'll be able to find it like that.
Okay, good. Great to talk to you. And
Nice one, mate. I really appreciate it.
No worries, and give our love to Steve as well.
Will do, will do.
Really interesting that. That's Rick Stanton, inspired by his brother Steve to make that film Spectrum. Have a look out for that.